Hello and welcome to today's Opsview webinar. Today we're talking about upgrading from older versions of 5 and older up to our latest version, which is 6.4. I'm Helen Carroll, VP of Marketing, and joining me today is Neil Colley, one of our lovely consultants. We are recording this session, so we'll share it with you after. Neil, over to you. Thank you.
Thank you, Helen, and thanks everyone for joining today's session. It's just a short half hour or so, and I'll be delivering about 20 minutes of content on how to upgrade from an old Opsview 5 installation to our latest and greatest Opsview 6.3 to 6.4 branch. I'd like this one to be as interactive as possible, so if you do have any questions or anything stopping you upgrading in your environment, please do add them to the WebEx chat, and we'll take an opportunity to answer them at the end of the session. But with that said, let's dive in. You really have two options for upgrading your existing 5 installation to 6. So we've got the classic in place upgrade where we install our new version over the top. For those of you in larger environments, you probably want to be considering migrating to new hardware. And an Opsview upgrade is a great opportunity to refresh that old hardware on which your existing installation is running. So think new operating systems, new hardware, more RAM, more security, and more features. I will briefly cover an in-place upgrade. So we'll start on in-place upgrades. So that's for your smaller environments, most likely. And there are a few things we want to take into consideration before we upgrade. So we make sure that we have a supported operating system. So one of the biggest changes and one of the biggest stumbling blocks that we see is that because Opsview 5 and Opsview 4 have been so reliable and just sat there running for so long, they're on older operating systems. So they're on the Red Hat 6s, the Red Hat 5s, and Ubuntu 14s and old Debians. But they're no longer supported. So currently, we have the following. I will show you. Actually, it's probably easier to dive right into the docs, and we'll go take a look at our supported operating systems. So we support Ubuntu 16 and Ubuntu 18, and the 7s of the CentOSes and Red Hats. We'll have 8 coming very soon. So do take note of the supported operating systems. Supported browsers, not so much. We don't really support IE anymore. But I mean, that's pretty standard. Everything else should be okay. If you're running Ubuntu 14 and you want to do an in-place upgrade, then we'll have to upgrade the OS before upgrading Opsview. So factor that in and add some time. We also want shell root access to our old master server and SSH access from the Opsview master server to all of our old Opsview slaves. And a big change here is in nomenclature and terminology. So we'll no longer use the phrase master and slave. We've got orchestrator and collector. The Opsview user replaces the Nagios user and a few others, which we'll cover in a moment. Another big thing is that this must be key-based. So we can't use password authentication. You need to have SSH keys configured between your Opsview master server and your old Opsview slaves, which I assume at this point you guys probably already do because they've been running for a little while. We also need that target user to have full or passwordless sudo access to be able to run the upgrade. The in-place upgrade is essentially a 6-step process where we either set up a local repo or add in the new Opsview 6 repo. We grab and download our Opsview deploy script, and then we prepare the upgrade. So we gather some information about our Opsview 5.4 environment, and then we've got an opportunity to manually fine-tune all of that before we actually kick the upgrade off. And then we perform the upgrade, and this will include a like a standard OS update, so something like an apt-get update or a yum update. This will update all packages that need updated on that system, so do bear that in mind. And then the final step is going to be registering those collectors. So if we demo just a few of the caveats here, we've got a Opsview 5 system. This is my classic Opsview 5 environment. I'm running that here. So just my long-standing venerable Opsview 5 install, and over the next session and a half now, we're going to be upgrading this to the latest and greatest Opsview. So it's nothing special. It's just an old Opsview 5.4 system. I'm going to go to help, my system, and we're going to take this box and we're going to ignore those exceptions, and we're going to take it from version 5.4.2, and that's going to get all the way up to 6.4. And to do that, like I said, with first things first is what we call bootstrap the Opsview installer. So we're going to grab a bash script from deploy.opsview.com. You can do all this offline if you want, and all of that is documented up on our website. So if you're considering a new installation or side-by-side migration, then we've got all of the well-documented steps here. But I'm going to run through this initial step, and this is going to grab our Opsview 6.3 installer and set up some initial prerequisites. You may be wondering why I'm going to Opsview 6.3 when we've just released Opsview 6.4, but the upgrade path from 5 is to go to Opsview 6.3 and then Opsview 6.4, because we've changed a few Python related settings from 6.3 to 6.4. And we'll see we've hit our first error. And this is a big gotcha that I see with most upgrades and a lot of upgrades, that we need to make sure we've got our repositories correct. So yum.repo on all systems that we're going to be upgrading, you will see the old Opsview 5 repo. So I no longer need this. And I just have that pointed to my new Opsview 6 repo. Now, when I run this, what we should see is that we begin a big old update. So this system has been running a long time. And I've got a lot of packages to install. And we also see that a new directory structure has appeared on our system. So we now have a directory structure called Opsview deploy, and it's in here where we can modify and tweak our system. Because mine's relatively modest, this is a relatively small system, there's not a huge amount for me to tweak here. So I'm going to make sure that the IP address for my system is correct. And I'm not going to change too much more. I'm actually going to call mine NC Opsview. And it's this directory structure which is going to control our Opsview deployment going forward now. So we'll be using Ansible. This is Ansible for those of you who recognize it. We're going to be using an Ansible-based deploy tool to manage and update all of our Opsview hosts. So I've got a few variables now and a few files that I can modify to tweak my Opsview upgrade and Opsview installation. If I had collectors on this system, or if I was migrating to a new box, I'd have a few more to change. But to keep things quick and easy and simple, we can see that I'm just going to keep it nice, and I'm going to only keep one system in here. So this is a single box, a single system Opsview installation. Having painstakingly modified all my files, I can now run bin to deploy, and I'm going to run a playbook. And this one is just upgrade pre, and this is going to gather some information about my environment, and it's going to populate some settings, and I can verify these settings and make sure they are what I think they should be. So it's going to grab my database passwords. It's going to pick up some information about my system. It's going to try and read LDAP. I guess it's not been able to do that. And then when I'm happy with these settings, with all these variables, I'm going to when I'm happy with all these newly generated credentials, I can run just a single playbook, which would upgrade and install everything. And this would install new Opsview packages over the top of my old system. So before I do this, what I would really want to do is ensure that I have comprehensive backups of my database and my file system. So if it's a virtualized environment, we take snapshots. If it's old spinning hardware, we take a file system backup of everything in USR local Nagios and everything on our database partition. If we are migrating to new hardware, it's a slightly different process. So we run through the initial bootstrap as planned there. So I've got a lot of packages to install, so I need to do a quick, what am I doing here? Try this. So if we were so this is another one. Sometimes you'll have conflicts with older Opsview agents. And part of the upgrade is going to be to install part of the upgrade is going to be to install that Opsview package onto your new system. So if you are migrating, the steps are relatively similar. So we install a new system using Opsview deploy. We migrate that data from our old database server to the new one. We move, and this is important, we move this Opsview secure wallet key from our old server to our new server, because that is responsible for encrypting all of our variables. So USR local Nagios etc. This file here is a key that is unique to everyone's system, and that needs to end up in this file. As a key, as a hash. So we need to have this entry in user secrets, and then we can comment out this entry, but we need to have this added to our user secrets file so that our new database and our new installation can handle and decrypt any of our encrypted variables. But that's only for migrations. For in-place upgrades, you don't need to do that. You can leave the secure wallet key exactly as it is. But if we are moving it to a new system, we need to grab that and add it to the new server. We'll also probably want to grab everything in var RRD, so all of our data in here, all of our graphing data, that will need to come over as well. So we can migrate our old graphing data. And then of course we need to convert old slaves to new collectors, or deploy new hardware and turn those slaves into new collectors. And then after a quick apply changes, assuming everything's gone well, we can start monitoring in 6. And then other migration tasks is a catch-all, which is going to include moving any custom scripts over, moving any custom settings over, and configuring things get the most out of your collectors. So we've got a few tweaks that will determine how many different threads and how many service checks will run at the same time. So there's a few other migration tasks that we can do after our update. All of this is covered on our migrating to new hardware, and it's all pretty comprehensive. So if I am updating from any Opsview 5 system to Opsview 6, this is the page I want to review first, probably followed by our planning your system page. So we've got where's planning your system? There. So planning your system gives you an idea about how to architect your new environment, so you can get an idea of how you might want to lay things out, and it gives you a couple of prerequisites and some sane MySQL settings, and a few other tips. But if we're migrating from 5 to 6, which most of the audience on this call are going to be looking to do, this is the page we want to review first. So the overall process is, like I say, it's very similar. It's install a clean version of Opsview 6, a fresh version of Opsview 6 with no data on new hardware. Modify our new Opsview deploy file so we can see how our infrastructure is laid out. And then it's to back up and then import our Opsview database from our old system. So on our old Opsview system, we take anything that was in our MySQL installation, anything that was in these 5 databases, so databases, Opsview, runtime, ODW, and dashboard. We need to export those and import them into our new system. So this is the only part of the process that would require any downtime if you're migrating to a new server. What you could do is export your data, and then you can copy it over to your new environment. And whilst that's copying over, or whilst we're getting ready to import, you can start up your old Opsview 5 services again. So you still have Opsview 5 running whilst you work on the migration. So you can leave Opsview 5 running, get Opsview 6 configured, get everything working exactly as you need it to, and then only when you're happy would you then decommission Opsview 5. So if anyone's worried about the amount of downtime or a period where there's no observability in your environment, there's no need, because you can have these two systems running in parallel if you've got the hardware. Once you've copied that data over, what you then do is simply import the databases. So we give you the full command here. So you drop the newly created fresh install databases and import your good data. There is a small script to run, and that takes a little while, about a minute, 2 minutes customarily, even on large databases, because all it does is change the schema. So we changed the schema a little bit to allow our old database to function with new Opsview 6. Then we copy our graphing data over, and then update any ops packs we need, update any monitoring scripts. So to make sure you get the newest, latest, and greatest ops packs that are on Opsview.com product and downloads. Product and ops packs, forgive me. So to make sure you get all of these, you can run just a single command here, which will install all of the newest ops packs, because these come as part of these come bundled as part of the repository. So as soon as you start the download, you start the installation, as soon as you successfully set up everything, as part of that install, it grabs those newest plug into those newest ops packs from our repositories and installs them for you. If you don't like the idea of Opsview deploy running your OS updates for you, so maybe you like to patch your systems yourself, you can turn off this feature so that we don't install OS updates at the time, so that we don't change any other settings. But as part of a new upgrade, Opsview deploy will be used to manage the entire distributed Opsview system. So we'd expect nothing else running on there. We'd want to maybe change a couple of system settings, so open file limits, file handles, that kind of thing. So we would hope that those would those changes would not affect anything else. File system location has also changed and will also change. So we'll no longer use this USR local Nagios directory, and the Opsview web app directory has changed. So things now live in opt-opsview core utils and opt-opsview web app. No longer are files owned by Nagios and root. They're owned by root and readable by Opsview. So you'll see a lot of files are owned by root and in the group Opsview. So that's now normal. And like I say, slaves have become collectors, and we've very, very briefly seen new randomly generated creds will be used for the database and auth-tkt authentication system. So we randomly generate some credentials on the first run. Use secrets. So these are our this file is only readable by root, so only people with root access can read this file. But here we have our various credentials, so to access our database, web server, reporting system, and you'll also see some new components in here, so the Opsview message queue, the registry, the data store, and the load balancer stats. So we, for those who aren't so familiar with Opsview 6 architecture, it's now a distributed message queue based application, so microservice based application. We make use of CouchDB, RabbitMQ, and HA proxy to proxy connections. So it's no longer based on Nagios, so there's no longer that Nagios service running. There's no longer any NDO objects in is a local Nagios. All of that is gone. So no longer will you have to worry about the things in spool or RW or RW or any of those things that you used to worry about. Opsview takes care. Opsview service checks will come in using message queues, so there's no flat files coming in being processed and added to the database. Performance is hugely improved, and the system is much more responsive.